The great part is, everything you need to know fits on 2 sheets of paper tonight. It's good for all of us, right? No, I mean, I think that this will be very, very eye-opening to most of you, or at the very least, it's going to be help to like buckle down and make sure that you're actually doing what you need to do to get on the right track. And I contemplated really just naming this talk like really optimal digestive health, because that's really ultimately what this is about. Any type of symptom, whether it be heartburn, IBS, Crohn's, colitis, but even just malabsorption of nutrients, right, kind of plays with this here too. And so ultimately, poor digestion can really be a factor in any disease, okay? The biggest issue with heartburn is that, and you know, when I'm going to say heartburn, when I say that, you can also just extrapolate acid reflux, GERD, right, gastrointestinal reflux disease, right? They're really all the same thing, slightly different, but they're really all the same thing. They all ultimately stem from some of the same mechanisms, but the number one principle that you are going to walk away tonight understanding is that the cause of heartburn is caused by too much or too little acid in your stomach. Who wants to answer?
Too little.
Yeah, so but what does 99.99999% of people in the world think it is? Caused by? Yes. It is 100%, I should say, between 80 and 90% caused by not enough stomach acid. And I'm going to unpack for you why that is, how that is, help you understand that this is not a Dr. Barnes theory. This has been the research. However, do all the drug companies that make medications that lower acid, what do they want everybody to think? Yes, okay? Because if you take a situation, right, where there's low stomach acid, and then of course you take a drug and you bring it down even more, well, then if this is truly the cause of the issue, how is that ever going to solve the problem, right? In fact, it'll likely, or I'd say almost in every single case, you know, make it worse, okay? So, acid-stopping drugs, okay, or antacids, right, is the classification of meds that we're talking about here. So, most popular of these, $7 billion a year in sales. That's a lot of money, right? But here's what's crazy. You know why they can sell this much? Is that 25 million Americans experience heartburn every single day. That's a lot of people, right? So if a lot of people have a problem, well then it's, you know, they want it fixed, right? Or subsided or alleviated, well it's easy to sell a lot of these. Now, there's hundreds of millions that experience heartburn on a weekly basis, right? But I mean, for most people, if they only experience the occasional heartburn, they're probably not taking a prescription anyways. Maybe they have some over-the-counters, but ultimately, whether it's super high-powered like Prilosec, or it's, you know, more lower level like a Tums, or it's like a kind of an over-the-counter antacid, they all are going to have the same negative effect on your body. Now, here's what's interesting. So with these drugs, and this is where the problem therein lies, the maximum amount of time that any of these medications have been studied, 6 weeks. They were only, so any drug that is out right now, the maximum they've actually evaluated somebody for as far as the effectiveness is 6 weeks. They got no data, at least clinical data, on what happens beyond 6 weeks. Zero. Because they were ultimately created and FDA approved for short-term usage, right? But how many people really take it for 6 weeks or even a few days or whatever, and then it's like, oh, like the problem's gone, now I don't need it anymore, I never refill a prescription, right? It usually is this ongoing thing over and over and over and over again. So with heartburn, there's really a couple of different ways that we have to look at this here, okay? Obviously, you know, when we talk about the acid in our stomach, and that's made up of a mixture of digestive juices. One's going to be hydrochloric acid, okay? but also there's stuff called pepsin, okay, and a bunch of other ones, right, to break down the various types of foods that we eat. But refluxing up into our esophagus, even a little bit, can cause a problem because all of this stuff is meant to occur, of course, occur in the stomach. It's produced in the stomach. In the same way, any of that going downwards into our small intestine, also problematic. Now there's a sphincter here, sphincter meaning think of like a valve or something that's going to close off, right, or open between your esophagus and your stomach. Well, guess what? There's also a sphincter between your stomach and your small intestine, or the rest of your intestinal system. So this is going to be really key. This one here, obviously, because most people are going to feel those symptoms, but this is also a big one too, that they actually play together, so we can understand what really triggers the opening and closure of these two sphincters, or meaning like when it's supposed to close is more, and here is when it's supposed to open up to drain the contents out of the stomach. That is the big issue. Now, what's interesting is that our stomach acid, as we get older, right, actually declines. The older we get, the more our stomach acid goes down. But most people, as we get older, right, we think it almost goes, this way.
So the acid's actually there to help not have reflux.
Mm-hmm. So check this out though, 80% of people, 40%, there was a study that was done, 40% of women over the age of 80, they found, produced 0% stomach acid. This, of course, is done on people like in nursing homes, right? And you think about, remember, your stomach acid has to break down every piece of food that hits you and essentially pulverize it, right? Chemically pulverize it down into absorbable nutrition. So, no doubt, as this same phenomenon goes, we also see the same thing, of course, like osteoporosis rising, right? Because we're not getting any nutrients out of food. So here are the major issues that are going to drive down stomach acid. Because we got to identify these, and then we're going to go over the solutions to identify these top 4 problems, pretty much. And really, it's 2 major ones, but there's a couple of ones. So, number 1 is going to be carbohydrate malabsorption. Okay, or maldigestion is also another way of looking at that. So meaning the carbs are not getting broken down properly inside of our stomach. So what happens then is that these carbs, which should be more finely broken down, are going to make it through your stomach and get into your small intestine, okay? Now, your small intestine, or I should say, because really, let me draw this out here a little bit more. Large intestine, and then even your colon, right? So those are the major pieces of this. Into your stomach, this is your stomach. You also have organs like your pancreas. So believe it or not, your pancreas actually helps with digestion, not just blood sugar, but there's actually pancreatic enzymes that contribute and help with your digestion. And then of course, what's another organ that contributes heavily to the digestion of your food?
Liver?
Next to the liver, gallbladder, exactly, right? So gallbladder.
And what does that do?
Fat breakdown.
Okay.
Okay? So all that kind of comes into play right here. But what happens is these carbohydrates, if they don't get broken down, well, you have all kinds of bacteria living in here that love sugar. Okay? They love it. They love it more even than you do, which is why when you got a lot of this stuff in here, they're going to send very, very strong, powerful signals telling you, give it to me. Okay? So then what happens is, so you give anything in life, right? We talked about this at the blast the belly fat. When there's more food source for a population of animals, you don't get fatter rats, right? You get more rats, right? If there's lots and lots of zebra, you don't get fat zebra, you get more zebras, okay? So when there's lots and lots of food for our bacteria, you don't get fat bacteria, you get more of them. And so what happens is they can migrate down, right? But there's more real estate for them to colonize, right? Because they're always going to look for expansion to new territory. So they start actually going up into your small intestine. So then, how many have heard of something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, right? That's the name for that. That's what happens. So when you get that, when you eat and you get that like full feeling, that belchy, gassy feeling pretty quickly right away, when there's bacteria in your small intestine, then these bacteria start fermenting those carbs right away, like the sugar, right? Now, when you ferment beer, when you ferment grapes, right? When you ferment white grapes, right? What does that create with it? Fizzy and gas, right? Because that's what they do. And so that's where this is, but then what happens is this kind of fills up, it creates something that's called intra or inter-abdominal pressure. So think about, there's like pressure pushing you up this way, right? Okay? So, and I'm going to unpack this even more, but just I want you to start grasping this here. There's pressure pushing up this way, right? Food is trying to go down this way, right? And so if it can't really go anywhere, it can't go to too fast, then maybe you lay down at nighttime, right? When that can't drain, right? Well, then guess what? There's not that normal sort of release downward for that, right? So then a lot of people are like, well, let's sleep up, and that oftentimes can help in the beginning stages. You sort of sleep reclined, right? And it gives you a little bit more of that gravity kind of pull right there. But ultimately, it's going to be putting pressure on your stomach, and that's what's going to shoot it up. So it's not a high amount of acid, it's the fact that the acid's not able to go or do what it's supposed to. Another thing that can cause this kind of pressure is a hiatal hernia. Okay, and that's where your diaphragm, which sits right on top of your stomach here, that can get little holes. Maybe a little like inguinal hernias, right, where your intestines can kind of pop out in areas that they're not supposed to. A lot of times, if you lift something like kind of, it's kind of gross looking, but it's not like it's really a problem. But if your stomach starts pushing up in through your diaphragm, right? Well, every time you breathe, your diaphragm is expanding and contracting, right? So it's like a geyser, just like squirting that in there. So that's where a lot of times, chiropractor, you can actually push and kind of help with a hiatal hernia there, and it can oftentimes help with acid reflux because it's relieving some of that intra-abdominal pressure, right? It's not really going to necessarily correct the cause, but it can just be a tool to really help with alleviating some of that pressure, with that. So when we think about carb malabsorption, also just think about you're feeding the bacteria that are fermenting. So remember, there are large intestines here, and this is why when you hear that little song, beans and beans, a magical fruit, the more you eat, the more you toot, right? Because they're very starchy, and they just take a longer time to get broken down, which is why they don't really start breaking down until they hit your large intestine and your colon, which then you get gas, right? If it breaks down higher up, that's when you get belching. Lower breakdown, slower breakdown, gas right down this end, right? Higher, faster breakout, gas up this way here, okay? So that's how that works. It's not, that's just because it's just taking forever for those types of foods to break down. But if those bacteria are existing higher up in your digestive system, that's why you can get that fermentation issue with kind of almost anything that you eat. A lot of times even healthy foods, like salads can do it for some people, right, on other vegetables. So now in your stomach, the normal pH is 3, okay? To our knowledge, for what we know, there is not one bacteria that exists on the planet that can survive more than 15 minutes at a pH of 3. Okay? That's why really your stomach is supposed to be a sterilizing environment, right? It really is supposed to nuke anything and everything that could possibly come in there when it has the right conditions. So pH 3 bacteria, they die. A pH of 5, they thrive. I made that. You like that?
Got a copyright there.
I know, right? Well, that's okay. I guess it's on the. It'll be on the YouTube before long here. So Prilosec. I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, but Prilosec. What it's found to do in most people is to completely wipe out HCl production and bring it down to zero.
But it doesn't do anything for the fermenting that's going on in the small intestine.
No, so watch this then. It pulverizes this, okay? Now food is entering your stomach. There's nothing to break it down, right, or very little. Your pancreas is like, all right, well, I'll do my part. Starts going crazy, secreting those enzymes. Gallbladder's like, I'll do my thing, way overworked, right? I mean, how many people have gotten their gallbladders removed, okay? Because it's just so full of toxic sludge and it's so overworked, it's gallbladder pooped out, right? And so now then, when you're eating this food, it's just gonna be further exacerbating this issue. So stomach lowering acid drugs, okay, are gonna absolutely just mess you up long term. It's gonna make a ever increasing problem. And I don't know too many people, unless they made drastic lifestyle changes, and this is people I work with and talk with, that they started taking a medication, Prilosec, let's say, and as time went on, they needed less Prilosec, right? Typically, usually they either need a higher dose or they're throwing the Tums on top of it. It's rare that they usually just kind of stay at the same dose for many, many, many years. Usually it requires more and more and more because it's further exacerbating this issue. So low stomach acid, you know what, let me just do this. Clean slate. So low stomach acid is going to lead to bacterial overgrowth. Maldigested carbs. Ultimately leads to increased, intra-abdominal pressure, right? Which leads to heartburn, GERD, acid reflux, etc., etc., etc.
So when you talk about the gallbladder use an example of the gallbladder, you lose your gallbladder.
Mm-hmm.
What fights off what it's like? It sounds like the spider's trying to climb up a hill. Now you don't have that.
Yeah.
What's working in your body to contra that?
So the pancreas helps with some of that. It has some lipase in there which breaks down fat. But ultimately, this is why when people get their gallbladder removed, they're gonna have either diarrhea or some pretty upset tummy every time they have a fatty meal. Because it's not there to help break everything down, so it puts all that extra pressure back on the stomach and back on the intestines. And all that fat, which normally would get broken down into little, triglycerides, and they're called micelles and everything, hits your intestine. Your intestine's like, holy crap, freaking out, boom, runs right through, right? It pushes it up because it can't do anything with it at that point. So the lower the stomach acid, right, that happens here, again, the more pancreatic contribution that has to happen, but really the pancreas was designed to only work in sort of almost like emergency type situations. It's not a long-term solution. It's like if it gets a little bit overwhelmed, you have too much food, the pancreas will come into action as sort of the savior, but it's only like kind of meant for a little short burst, right? Not this like kind of continual bombardment. So definitely for most people with acid, like in the beginning stages, like with acid reflux, heartburn, pancreatic enzymes can actually be a really big help for helping reduce that, because it's taking some of the burden off of your compromised stomach. So, but I want to go to this right here. This blew me away. I was just researching this the other day. 30 grams of undigested carbs have the ability to create 10 liters of gas.
That's hard to measure. I mean, for a person doesn't.
I mean,
That's Chris.
10 of these, right? Or more. That's more than a liter. So this is big, this is number one, right? Now what this also creates here, remember bacteria cannot exist in your stomach when it's pH 3 or lower. As that comes up, because your stomach acid is going down, right? Remember, less acid would mean it'd be more alkaline, right? Or just less acidic. Then there's a major opportunity for bacteria like H. pylori to begin to grow in there. Cannot exist in an environment of less than 3 pH, okay? Cannot exist. But H. pylori, on average, increases by 1% per year. So 50% of Americans have H. pylori currently, right? And so theoretically then, if you're 60 years old, you have a 60% chance. That's kind of how it runs, basically, of having H. pylori.
How do you measure that?
H. pylori? Yeah, you can do a blood test, not very accurate. Stool test is actually the most accurate for it.
What about the stomach biopsy, like when they do like an endoscopy?
Yeah, and I think you can see the effects of it, but I'm not certain about how if you can get exact colonizations off of that, possibly. But I'm not. I'm mostly it's most sensitive through stool testing.
Okay.
Is the most sensitive way to find that. So it's interesting. I had a stool test done about a year ago, and I actually had a little bit of H. pylori inside of me. Okay, I've had some, many of you have been long-term patients know I have some well-documented poor nutritional habits leading up to about basically the time I got into chiropractic school. Mountain Dew, like crazy, just all kinds of junk food,
Those
processed
cupcakes
food,
you
right?
ate over that holiday.
What's that?
Those cupcakes you ate over the last
That's
holiday.
right, yeah.
I remember that picture.
Yeah, it was it was donuts actually. Yeah.
Donuts.
Twice a year. Whenever we go to Nashville. So H. pylori, most people know that's a big cause of ulcers right in the stomach. It's also the most common cause of stomach cancer too. Because basically this is an infection, okay? When you have this, anytime you have an infection, is that there's an overgrowth of bacteria beyond their normal ranges there. So then here's what's crazy. As infection in your body goes up, stomach acid goes down. Because it's a stressor on the body, infection creates stress. And so even mental, emotional, and even physical stress also drive down. So that's really beyond our poor diet. If you think about our society, the go, eating in a rush, right? Taking your meals through a window in your car, right? I realize we're not probably doing much of that anymore, hopefully not at all, but at one point we're probably doing that more than we are now, okay? It drives that down, but infection will create that. So this creates sort of this like self-perpetuating problem, right? It gets worse and worse and worse, right? And so that's why if it's not controlled, H. pylori tends to get more overgrown because it helps to drive down, it's driving down the stomach acid more and more and more.
So you can't really have all three then.
Say it again.
If you have low stomach acid, you can have all three. You can have bacterial growth.
Typically, now there has been a study that have really looked at all these variables together, right? Because they just kind of look at one piece of this. But I would say probably if you have this, your chance of having that is way higher, right?
Yeah.
And so they all play off of each other big time. Which is why it's really a multifactorial, and that's what I'm kind of leading to here, is that there's no magic bullet to overcome this naturally. It's really like kind of addressing each of these issues as well as we possibly can. Oops. Okay? Are you with me?
Yep.
Now here's what also where this comes with too, how this really plays out in our life. So we've heard of, or maybe you've heard of like the brain-gut axis, right? Or how, if there's a problem in our brain, there's usually a problem in our gut, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's one linkage of that they've studied. So as pepsin goes down, along with HCl, hydrochloric acid, pepsin is what specifically breaks down protein. Okay? It breaks down protein down into amino acids. So one of the popular ones, or one of the main ones that we need, is something called tryptophan. Everybody kind of knows that one from eating too much what? Yep. So watch this, right? And it's not the only thing, and there's other foods that are higher than tryptophan, but it's just sort of the classic example. You eat a lot of tryptophan, okay, turkey, then what does everybody do after?
Sleep.
Yes. Because, right, tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin, and serotonin makes you happy, relaxed, sleepy, okay? But if this can't happen because it's being impaired, right, then you're not breaking down as many amino acids like tryptophan. And there's other ones I just wanted, because you all know this one. This is not getting broken down. Serotonin starts tanking. Well, I mean, what mental diseases are disorders are on just a skyrocketing rate right now? Anxiety, depression, big time. In fact, if you have depression, you're prescribed an antidepressant, and a common class of antidepressant drugs is SSRIs, serotonin, right? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? This. So, is fixing your stomach acid, does that fix all mental disorders? No, basically this is where this has really far-reaching implications with us here. Most of the times when people have a lot of anxiety, right, a lot of depression, especially anxiety, they don't want to eat very much, right? There's just not that stimulus, and a lot of that is because your body's just not giving you those right signals or those cues that go along with it. Hey Jen, can you start erasing the back side of this for me, just because I'm going to need that in a second. I'm trying to write big, even though I know it's messy and you're going to go back and look at this and be like, what the heck? But the point is you follow me as we're going along, right?
What's the solution? That's all I care about.
That's what we're going with right now. I'm building my case right now, right?
The test that we
Building
did,
my
that
case.
you had, like I did personally, all those tests, did we test for H. pylori?
Now, like I said, blood is not the way you do it.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's get into the solution. I'm going to make sure I went over all my causes here so far.
Well, is it safe to assume that if you have low stomach acid, you probably have H. pylori?
Yeah, you can't say for certain, but higher chance. Higher chance, yeah, for sure, higher chance. So here are the action steps. They're really pretty easy. You just gotta increase your stomach acid, right?
Apple cider vinegar.
So first step, reduce, right? We need to reduce carbs, okay? I mean, that's pretty much anything. But also it's the antacid drugs, okay? And that's sort of done at your discretion or with the help of your medical doctor, right? I can't necessarily give you any legal guidance on that. But also another one you gotta decrease, fiber. What? I thought fiber was good for my digestion. Says who? Right? Our ancestors ate very, 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 very little fiber. And guess what? They also didn't have toilet paper back then. Didn't need it, okay?
Leaves.
So I think about this, when's my dogs eat all raw meat. I've never had to wipe their butt, right? When I eat clean, maybe this is too much information, but it's like, seriously, I wipe nothing there.
It
okay?
is what it is.
It is what it is, right? So, but this stuff breaks down slower, right? So this is where it's gonna also cause fermentation too, in the large intestine. So really you're looking at just increasing meat, right? Quality meats are gonna be a big one. Obviously other fats too, but really it's this is a big help for that.
Give me some good examples of fiber, what you would think of fibers.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of vegetables, very fibrous vegetables, like broccoli, right? A lot of people eat broccoli and they get gas. Why? Because it ferments, it takes forever to ferment and break down, and it causes that issue to happen.
Is that because the acid's in the stomach or not?
I mean, to some degree, yeah, but I mean, it's just, if you have a low stomach acid, consuming a lot of those types of fibrous veggies, okay, are gonna make you more symptomatic. So you can look up, there's some diet specific names that would want to be called the specific carbohydrate diet, SCD, and another one is GAPS, okay? These are kind of two guidelines, and for those of you that have been in other nutrition classes, you would find that easily 90 to 95% of what I teach is gonna, you're gonna find fit in with that, but it has some really specific recommendations on what to avoid, even that we'd otherwise would seem as healthy. Okay, and I'm not going to go through. You can print off SCD specific carb diets, okay, and get them in a little PDF on your computer. You can find that in a minute when you get home tonight. So step number 2 is replace. Oh, and reduce. Another thing I would put here. Stress.
So exercise is actually good for that.
Mm-hmm. It's not too much, but yeah, because too much exercise can seem stressful in the body, and I mean excessive. Slowing down while you're eating, okay? Chewing your food, that's another big one that I'm actually pretty bad at that, I admittedly. I measure my life by minutes, and so I'm just so used to doing everything at the fastest, most efficient speed that I can do it. And so a lot of times, I will finish and have my family, it'll be 15 minutes before my family's done. I think that's one of the things that's annoying to me, but if you think about it, do kids innately eat super fast or what?
Slow.
They eat super slow innately, right? I mean, they play with their food. I know, they play with their food. And some of us, we can look at that and it's kind of just finish up already. We want to do the dishes and get on with our night and get you to bed and all that. But you don't, you teach kids to kind of eat fast. What do? They go to school, right? It's they got 20 minutes, eat that food. It's and that's from the time they get in line to then eat. It's we're just training them to eat fast. But really, ancestrally, mealtime would have been not that long ago would have been the thing. You slow down like crazy for the day and you relax with your family. Many of you have traditions right on Sundays where it's, you have with the family and you take your time, right? And obviously, we all have more fond memories about the long, slow meals that we had versus the ones that took 7 minutes, right? So mastication, chewing, kind of falls more under here, but really I don't want to underclub how really important that process is right here. You really should be able to drink your food, if you will. Okay? Meaning you masticate, you chew it out that much where it's done a lot of the work, right? That's the mechanical aspect, is the chewing, and then all this other stuff we're going to talk about then is really the chemical aspect of how food gets broken down. Chew your food. I will make a pledge with you all that I'm going to work on chewing my food better, okay? It's not going to be easy, but we all have our flaws. So, there are ways to supplement hydrochloric acid. I'm going to take it in supplement form. There are ways to supplement pancreatic enzymes. Talked about that a second ago. There's ways to supplement bile from the gallbladder. Another one in nutrition is something called bitters. Okay, those are not just for cocktails, right? But some examples of bitters would be like ginger. Okay, so you have an upset stomach, right? You do ginger, right? That's been known, it's an old wives' tale forever. Everyone's sick of growing up, and parents would give me 7-Up, right? Because there was ginger ale. They meant well, but they were totally off on that. Milk thistle's another one. Wormwood. There's a bunch of them, but really, ginger is going to be the one you most have heard of. So, a ginger tea, right after dinner would be very helpful for your digestion. Another one, like what Nancy said here, that stimulates stomach acid production is going to be apple cider vinegar. So my entire family, we all have a tablespoon. My wife and I each have a tablespoon. My kids have a half a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar before every meal that we have, okay? Kind of this like sort of primes the pump, okay?
Take it straight, or do you drink it in water?
I put in a little bit of water. I mean, I can do it straight, no problem, but I don't care. I mean, I can do anything. I'm good at taking shots, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely easier in water, yeah. And you dilute it a little bit, and then I'll usually put a little salt with it too.
1 tablespoon?
1 tablespoon, yeah. Also, lemon is really similar in that too. Lemon juice does it. But think about this, right? Lemon juice is very
Acidic.
vinegar is very,
Acidic.
there you go. But of course, if we're believing that it's too much acid is what the cause of the problem is, people will probably avoid vinegar like the plague, right? Or having too much citrus juice. But it's, so they're kind of running away from potentially the solution. Sauerkraut, also fermented veggies, is really good for that as well. Raw sauerkraut, I should say here. Anything good should be that way. Because, and this will go in the next step here, which is then you restore. Fermented foods. So now we're looking at restoring and getting back under control our microbiome, right? And getting those bacteria that are, out of place and out of balance to sort of get put back in their place, literally, right? So fermented food is great for that. So sauerkraut, again. Specifically soil-based probiotics. Why do you think as a culture we are so deficient in soil-based probiotics?
Our soil's terrible.
Okay, but what else?
We're not growing our own food, so we're not.
Roundup.
What's happening to food that gets put in the grocery store?
It's getting gassed and it's getting.
Rinsed, bleached, disinfected, right? So it's wiping off all of that versus if you were just to pull, I'm not saying you don't wash, if you pull stuff out of your garden, you don't wash it,
Yeah.
right? But there's a difference between washing it and like nuking it, right? So we're really, really, really deficient in these. And again, thinking about even a couple hundred years ago, how much more soil-based probiotics we'd be getting.
How do you know if they're soil-based or not when you buy probiotics?
Yeah, there's names in there. Some, Josh Axe, like for example. I mean, there's lots of soil-based probiotics you can just buy that they say soil-based probiotics on there. Yeah. I mean, there's over 200 bacteria, so like off the top of my head, like it's on the tip of my tongue. There's a couple of big ones that it's not coming to my head, but I know they're on that bottle over there. But also, right. But even aside from that, if you're growing some of your own food in your garden, like try maybe just to do as light of rinsing as possible on it, because you're going to get billions of just like eating it right out of your own garden, right from that soil. So I just don't want to underscore that, but just not, and also even just not nuking your food. Going to a farmer's market, right, and buying some vegetables from there, and again, like not washing the mess out of it. You're going to be getting more of those probiotics, and they know their place. They're going to colonize pretty quickly when they're given the chance to be able to do that. Bone broth, another big one. Very rich in amino acids, collagen, right, and nutrients that help with our stomach lining and digestive lining. Glutamine is another one. L-glutamine is big. Many of you have heard of that in terms of like leaky gut. And there's another one called DGL or diglycinated licorice, okay? It's like kind of like a slippery substance, so it's just kind of good for moving food through there. Now, a lot of times if you've been on acid drugs, antacid drugs for a while, you're almost certainly to have a mineral deficiency, because if you've been pummeling your acid down, right, it's just very unlikely that you've been extracting nutrients for your food. So a lot of the minerals like zinc and iron and calcium especially are some of the ones that are likely pretty low in your body, right? If you've been on antacids for a while. Which again, remember like osteoporosis, right? Increasing as time goes on. And if you think about it, it's like as we get older, more and more people get put on. And I want to go back to that just so this clicks. Very few teenagers, right, need antacids unless they're really messed up. Majority of the population is 50 and over. So if stomach acid were increasing, right, as that goes on, well then we'd be seeing, those issues. Or because it's decreasing, right? Really, if it was high acid was a problem when we're younger, well then you'd see more teenagers on those, right, versus baby boomers, that are going to be down here. But it's the drug is kind of flipped again, going against what common knowledge is on that. Now another big one here, I put this on my Facebook. Sometimes I just plop little things on there because I like to get people to think, but water will actually, right, which is going to be alkaline, will actually suppress your stomach acid. So you should never be drinking water with meals. Never.
What should you drink? Anything?
Apparently a little bit of wine can stimulate some acid. Not too much, but a little bit. Vinegar, right?
But you should vinegar during the meal too.
Yeah. I just want to do with too much water because you're going to make that water acidic, but you really just want it to your digestion to do its own thing. So water should be maybe a little bit before, but never during. Crazy, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now there is a way to test your stomach acid. Good luck. You're going to go talk to your doctor about getting this done. They're going to look at you like you're a kook, but there actually is a way to test it. It's called a Heartburn capsule. It's like a little sensor the size of like a vitamin. Drops it down, it's got sensors, it spits data back out to the outside world, right? And it can actually test your stomach acid on the inside. Again, I will be shocked and give you a high five if you get your doctor to actually do that for you to confirm that that's what the scenario is. But it is so far off the radar, but it is a legitimate medical thing, all right, that can get done. Probably a gastroenterologist is more likely to do it than just your GP. Probably bring it up to your GP and they're definitely gonna look at you like, huh, what is that? Or they'll go over like, oh, what do you mean? And they'll be Googling it on their computer, right, to figure out what it is. Gastroenterologist should know what this is, but that's how you confirm, like, for sure.
Is that different than the one that they use to?
Yeah, this is literally it's the size of a vitamin.
Right.
And you
Well, I
swallow
know,
it.
but they have one that they want to see your small intestine. They can't.
Yeah, no, this is
different?
just only data in your stomach.
Okay.
It doesn't care about how it
Okay.
passes, what happens when it passes through there.
No camera, just
Nope.
measures.
Just
Okay.
a measurement, yeah. There's also some at-home ways to do it, which are a little bit tougher. Like you can take betaine HCl, right? You can take HCl capsules, and if you have high stomach acid, you'll instantly get reflux, right? Because if you're taking high acid and then popping acid up, like it's going to instantly give it to you. But if you take that and you don't feel an increase of acid, like heartburn, right in that, like I'm just saying, you take it on an empty stomach and you don't feel an immediate meaning like within a few minutes rush of like heartburn, then you almost certainly have low stomach acid. And I'm not going over the exact, there's an actual like timing protocol. You can look it up, and if you have a hard time finding it, like I can email it to you, or I'll give it to you, but I didn't want to go through all that, because really it's gonna just, but if you want to know, it's good, it's gonna confirm what is likely already going on. So one thing I forgot to go over here, as on the side of my notes, and I was just doing some extra research, is that how this ultimately plays out is that when we go back to this right here, I just want to connect one more dot here. With, I'll make fun of my art. All right, save your mouth. Down into your stomach, down down into your small intestine, large intestine, colon, right? So remember there's a sphincter here, sphincter here. Acid is what actually stimulates so the nervous system here will, going back to our brain, the nervous system will actually, remember the nervous system controls everything, right? It's got its hand in every single function in our body. There's actually, I'm trying to think of like what a good analogy, but it's like almost like something trips, it's like a tripwire, right? There has to be enough acid production stimulation, because if you think about it, normal situation, food goes in, right? Normally, your acid's going to increase to compensate for that. So it's like your toilet, right? Like it fills up, and that's what, and then it kind of starts draining, right? It empties down, the little bulb thing, right? Kind of triggers that whole response, or it shuts off, I guess, if you will. So there's got to be an increase of acid to a certain threshold, right, for this sphincter to open, because remember the body's smart, it knows it. So it's okay, enough acid, we ate enough food, enough process has been going on. Now let's drain the contents, and it's like really like a toilet that's going down, right? So if there's not enough stimulation here, this sphincter doesn't know to open. So you produce a little bit of stomach acid, right? Even if it's, remember, it takes just a little squirt into the wrong area for it to be very uncomfortable, because there's not the right kind of cells in this area. It causes instant damage. That's why it burns, right? And so it doesn't trigger that whole process to happen. So then now you got this little bit of stomach acid that didn't drain around. So you bend over, right? Pick something up, you're cleaning, whatever, or you lay down, right? And that's when it can be even just a little bit of stomach acid, because it didn't empty, that goes out, that causes that problem. So it's the trigger, right there. It's the trigger. That would help if I explained that 20 minutes ago, but you guys
Well,
get
you
it.
kind of did.
Yeah. Well, I know, but I didn't go over like the exact mechanism, the physiology with it. So you need to trigger that to open. So, again, like that's something where when there's an impaired situation going on, something like the lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, right, and those bitters or whatever, they can help get this to respond and get a little flutter of life into it to help you out in the meantime while you're trying to change the environment, right? It's this whole environment here that's the problem. It's not just what you feel like in this area right here. That's the side effect of a whole imbalance going on.
The food stays in your stomach this is biology from 50 years ago.
Yeah, about 30 minutes.
It's 30 minutes?
To an hour. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're saying that, if there's not enough acid, that lower sphincter doesn't open.
Correct.
That can cause the acid to go up into your esophagus.
Well, right, because it's not
and
draining.
create
So then you have, remember, then you have that pressure that's pushing you up this way, right?
And then it's going up in here.
Correct.
So the acid is a real issue.
It's 100% the issue.
But,
yeah.
okay.
But it's not
That
necessarily,
makes sense.
the point is that to sum it up, it's not the quantity of it,
Right.
right? It's not a hyper,
It's
the technical term of this is hypochlorhydria. The fancy term for acid reflux in the medical is hyperchlorhydria, but that's really not, that's what they say, that's actually not what's not physiologically happening.
So most people think that it's the upper one sphincter that's not working, letting the gas out.
Well, listen, they do play off each other. It's almost like
I know,
open,
but-
close,
but if
right?
you're saying that when you bend over,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, that happens to me, so it's basically my lower one and not my upper one.
Well, but it's kind of like a trap door in a sense, right? It's like this opens, that shuts, right? Because if this is not like opening up, well then it leaves the opportunity for food to come in, right? But it's like, but otherwise when that process is done, that's when it shuts down a little bit. It's not completely closing off, right? Because it's like if you ate, again, it's not like it's just gonna like
Yeah.
bounce off, right? But it is controlling, it's more that it's not draining so much that there's necessarily a problem here, although there could be, okay? But it's more rare that it's here than that. Another kind of technical term of this is called gastroparesis. It's like slow stomach, openings. That's another kind of just like key word that plays in with this whole thing right here. This is a common word in medical literature, gastroparesis for that. So, any other questions?
If you're eating a meal somewhere at home,
Yep.
whatever, is lemon water okay?
Yeah, but you just gotta make sure you do it like soon enough, like, you know, you'd wanna sit down, get it right away, sip on that a little bit, drink that, like, kind of, you know, before you eat, right?
Okay.
Which is easy to do, because
In
you get
addition
your
to
water
the-
right away, right?
In addition to the apple cider vinegar.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you could technically bring apple cider vinegar with you when you go out to eat, but, you know, like, I would worry more about hitting that like when you're at home. You know, like lemon water is just sort of
I
the,
just think when I go out,
yeah.
I have to usually drink water.
So, I mean, you can get apple cider vinegar capsules now, like my wife brought some of those to, when we went to Italy.
Oh,
So you
okay.
just gotta, I mean, you gotta hit those a little bit
They do
earlier.
have little bottles.
Yeah, they do, yeah. You gotta hit those a little bit earlier, because it's gonna take a little bit longer to like get broken down before it releases the contents, right? So, versus just straight drinking it. So you'd have to time it back a little bit to kind of get the effect that you want. So like if you're headed to the restaurant, that's when you probably would pop it, right? The capsules, yeah.
Exactly.
Or just do it, if you're, do it right before you leave, you could try to just drink it that way too. Cause it's just priming the pump, for
So
that.
what do you drink? Let's say you're going someplace that doesn't have wine, and you need something to drink with your meal, but so you're saying don't drink water, so now what do I drink?
What about milk?
Milk is like more alkaline than water even. Yeah. So what do you drink? Like you just drink water early enough before you really start eating.
You just don't drink a lot while you're eating. It's
I mean, listen,
probably
that was kind of new to me. So like I'm not like 2 years into like
Yeah.
implementing this. I mean, part of what's fun for me in teaching is I get to learn new stuff to implement for my stuff, right? So I didn't drink, just I don't know. I actually the only time I really drank a lot of fluids is when I was at a restaurant. 'Cause it's just kind of like sitting right there, but I usually don't really go out of my way. I was thinking like at home, I don't really go out of my way to like drink water just because I'm sitting down and have a meal. So, but that wasn't because of anything other than I just didn't do it. I certainly grew up, drink your milk, and I would drink a mega glass, you know, like with my dinner, because I grew up in the heartlands. That was like, milk was cheaper than water, you know, up in that area there. So I think the question is, well, when you say like, when you need to take it, like, well, what's the need, you know what I mean? For having something to drink with your food.
I don't know, sometimes it's just, you eat something that has a taste to it that
Yeah.
you don't like, so you wanna just, we get.
I mean, you're going to the wrong restaurant, I was kidding.
True.
Maybe just a little sip, you know what I mean? It's not saying you can't have a sip of water, that's gonna kibosh the whole situation, but, you know, like a lot of times you might be drinking a couple glasses of water with the meal, depending on how long you're sitting down, right? If you're not conscious, like, I mean, I think really, like, when I'm at a restaurant and they keep refilling it, that's when I'm more likely to, like, drink a ton of water. And then you put that on top of also lower quality food. No wonder why most people feel like garbage after they eat out. There's kind of multiple layers to that, so.
Well, and it's salty.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the least
It's
of
makes you
the issue.
thirsty.
True, yeah, that's true, yeah.
But drinking water in general is something we're told do it all the time. So I do think that's why I asked,
Yeah.
because it's just a habit whether I'm eating.
Yeah, water should be more of like done when you're thirsty throughout the day versus like trying to, like, I have to do it now. you
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
exactly.
So if you drink it before you eat, can you drink it right before you eat, or should you?
I would
wait
give,
till it's
I mean, essentially as much time in between is the better,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
much time in
true.
between. Cause I mean, listen, part of it is like when you sit down, you're smelling food, right? Like your body, like it knows, it starts prepping it, right? It's like there's cues that start triggering the production of that stomach acid. So it's not like it takes food to hit your stomach for it to like also, oh, I guess we're eating, right? Like there's visual and there's, you know, sensory and all kinds of things that would trigger that. You know, it's like exactly, you smell the thing, you start salivating, right? There's cues that happen in our body with that too, so.
Wow, this has been really interesting.
Good, well, it was
I'll never eat again.
interesting to me for this.
That's the secret.
So there's a supplement protocol?
There is, yeah, so I put together, you know, like HCl, betaine HCl, pancreatic enzymes. In fact, there's a couple products that have like kind of all of that sort of digestive help in one. you know, again, it's like supplements are really should only be needed in the first initial stages because you're going to be working on some of these things. You know, so like I would just say low-hanging fruit as far as like action steps, if they were me walking away from this, would be to, you know, I mean, add an apple cider vinegar, lemon water, you know, like before every meal, right? Try to drink a little bit less water before or during meals, right? You know, some of the easy things would be like, you know, lowering, or not easy as far as like, you know, should be kind of working on this anyways, would be lowering the carbs and the fiber.
But if you have H. pylori, then how do you?
Yeah, so there's some specific herbs that can kill that. Yeah. I might actually have
I
something.
think I've got
over
all
there.
this.
Yeah, so I actually think I have something over on the shelf. I did at one point anyways for H. pylori because I bought it for myself and I'm like, well, maybe some other people have it, so I bought it for myself.
Do you know if juicing as an alternative to eat, I know you missed the fiber, but you're reducing the fiber, so.
Yeah, but
you
you're
wanna
upping the
get some
sugar.
of the enzymes that come from the plants and it's easier, cause it's a liquid, like you were saying.
I'm not a big fan of
Drink your
juicing
food,
anymore.
is juicing helpful?
I'm not a big fan of juicing anymore.
Okay.
I do it as a treat. It's really.
Does the detox process that you have help in this part?
Maybe a little bit, yeah. Maybe a little bit with that. But yeah, no, I don't
I
juice.
thought that was the stomach.
So why are you not a fan of juicing? What's the downside?
Because if juice was in nature, well then it would just exist in that. I mean, when in your life would you ever like eat 20 carrots in one sitting?
Bugs Bunny.
You know?
Yeah.
Or like 4 pounds of kale.
Right.
I just don't think it's natural, that really.
Okay.
Is the biggest thing. I just say it's like, I'm not saying it's not, you throw the whole baby out with the bathwater in that scenario, but I just think it's not as high, I don't think it should be as hyped as what it is.
But if your body's really deficient in.
Now, what you could do is blend it, right? Blend it, because then you're having everything, you still would have to kind of chew it up a little bit. And definitely if you're drinking juice, you should be chewing it, because otherwise you're stimulating nothing, right? The only thing that doesn't require digestive juices that we consume is water, because you don't have to chew it, right? That's really the only natural, you don't need it. So, but anything else that you eat is gonna need digestive enzymes. But if you're just drinking something, like your body doesn't really, it's kind of hitting it with like, well, what are you throwing at me, right?
Is there anything special you put in the smoothie, like you just talked about kale and carrots? Could you put? I put that in my smoothie.
Yeah.
But I don't put 20 carrots. In
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Again, it's just like, so I chew my smoothies now. Like I physically like pretend like I'm chewing, even though I don't need to.
Ever since
right?
you mentioned that over a year ago, I conscientiously catch myself.
It's weird. It's weird. It takes training. It really does. Yeah. It takes training
I think
to.
about it, I said, oh, well, I need to chew it to release whatever that chemical is.
Yep. It triggers the whole. The mechanical stimulates the chemical, right? So that's why, like, going back to that chewing. I mean, and I think the third takeaway would be like chewing. Make sure you're chewing like more. You really can't chew too much, right? So
what about chewing gum?
yeah, bad for you.
That's bad for you?
Yeah.
Well, you were saying chewing.
Because think about your chewing, and then there's nothing ever hitting your stomach.
So the
But wouldn't that increase your stomach acid?
Yeah, you'd think so, but I've read stuff that kind of shows the contrary. I think it's because it's like you can't outsmart the body, and somehow it creates some type of like backfiring.
Because it's probably anticipating that there's supposed to be something there for it.
Yeah, it's like fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, or whatever, you know, shame on me, shame on you, right? Is the way? I don't remember the exact like mechanisms off the top of my head now,
Well, I
but
don't chew gum, but I was just.
yeah, I mean, well, so if like you're doing it for like a breath reason, like just chew as quickly as possible and spit it out. It's like don't just chaw on it all day long, right? So yeah, we're not horses, you know. We don't need to chaw. Yeah, we don't need to chaw and stuff. So.
I can't help.
All right, good. Excellent. Here's the better digestive health. Even if you don't have heartburn,